Well, woke is back. That's just what's happened. Nothing better than seeing this weekend two horrific piece of shit misogynist MAGA Trump lovers literally love the paedophile president, even though he's a paedophile president, getting absolutely jawed. Literally, Jake Paul getting his jaw taken clean off,
just all the way off
by Anthony Joshua. Just quality stuff, really. Yeah, I think that. Go on.
Did you see any of the interview with Anthony Joshua afterwards? I'm sorry, I've been like aching to say this about
No.
He's so funny. He's literally funny. Like he's doing that thing like where you compliment someone just enough like they can't get mad because he's basically say like he doesn't say exactly this, but he's basically like if it's he's a lot of people would have died if I did that to them. And so like fair enough.
Yeah.
That's
I
it,
love
though.
that. Like, it's just really impressive that he got to this point and he did really well for him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's so good. It's quality.
I mean, it's like I think, both of these dudes, like it's like they haven't really been like, I mean, Jake Paul hasn't fought a boxer in his prime that is currently still boxing and like active training, all that kind of stuff. And Andrew Tate hasn't been a serious fighter for a long time either, but it's just like the absolute ego and hubris to think that, he just was like at, the level to compete. And I think it also kind of just, it's that thing where it's like he had to do it eventually. He talks so much shit about how he's a man and how he's like the best fighter and all this kind of stuff. Like he had to get back into the ring eventually. And like this was always gonna be the outcome, really. Like
he finally fought someone who wasn't one of his like sex trafficking victims and
exactly,
got the shit beaten out of him. I've been saying right for a while that like when you see like fash riots or like fash marches get out of control, it's like when a leftist march gets out of control and it's going really fucking well, what leftists will do is like occupy a space. And then they'll start like having like an encampment, and then they'll start like just doing a little leftist society in the space that they've taken. And that's the thing they do because it's like a vision of the world that we want to be in, right? And when fash get out of control, they're just punching and punching and punching because they think that, I've been saying this, they think that if you punch the prime minister, you become the prime minister. And I feel like Andrew
Highlander
Tate
rules.
Yeah. Exactly. I feel like Andrew Tate felt like because he's like part of this like successful reactionary political project, he should also be like fight. If he fights, he will win because he's got the like fists of destiny. Like he's blessed by the power of misogyny to like win every fight, and then he just gets battered. Obviously,
like he's
fighting and politics are not actually related.
He's like absorbed the physical strength of all of the other manosphere dudes that he has like just consumed their audience cheap. And like
they're doing the spirit
he's
bomb
making
thing.
A spirit bomb.
Yeah, send him. Yeah, but like the way that they do it is they like expose their crotch to the sunrise. Like that one guy. That was a throwback for me. Recently.
And all of their like retained semen just flies out. That's what they've been retaining it for. Yeah.
The big spirit jizz bomb.
It's Red Planet. Welcome everybody. We're doing a full episode today on semen retention, but before we get to all of that, we're going to start the way we usually do by asking Tim, what's the most based thing you've done this week?
Well, bit of a wild one this week. A little bit, some ups and downs. Obviously, we just recently had, like there was like. What is it? Is it Trans Week of Remembrance, and then also like trans all that kind of stuff.
Week of Visibility and Day of Remembrance.
Day of Remembrance. Yeah. Unfortunately, a friend and one of our beloved community members, Lucy, didn't quite make it out of the week. But there was a big rally that we had here to protest the government's puberty blocker ban which has gone to the High Court. We found out just before the rally that the High Court, I think it was the High Court, is actually managed to. There's like an injunction, so it's not going to be able to be enforced at the moment, which is good. But and we also got to have a little bit of a kind of like a little community moment for Lucy, and kind of a lot of people got to talk about what she meant to them and how she was kind of like a local kind of trans mother figure who like helped a lot of others on their various journeys and all that kind of stuff. So that was nice. And yeah, I didn't actually think I was going to make it to the protest because I was getting tattooed today all day, but it just happened that it was like literally across the street from where it was, and I didn't realize. So I was literally like, yeah, opposite the park that it happened, and we finished up just in time that I managed to get down and go, and yeah, got to catch up with some friends and some people that I don't get to see too often there as well, which was always good. But yeah, so it was a little bit of a somber one, but we also had the good news that yeah, that obviously there was the injunction, and that there was, yeah, it was like it's an unenforceable rule at the moment that they can't prevent doctors from prescribing puberty blockers for trans kids at this point. But yeah, so that's going to be a continuing legal thing, but it does look like it's not going to be a thing that we have to worry about for too much longer. What about you, Mule? What have you been up to?
So I have been trying to think for quite some time about like what else I want to do organizing wise, and I decided to throw Sean a line, who we had on the show the last time, to ask him about Cooperation Manchester, because obviously when he came on, we just had like such a good conversation about the way that organizing is in the UK and stuff, and it's like I think that that really is it. I think that a lot of it that we need to do here in the UK is really about political education and making people understand that there has to be a working class contingent of resistance to the oncoming fascism, and it's not even oncoming, it's already here, in many ways. So I have been yeah, just having a little chat with him. He says that yeah, that'll he's down to get me involved and help out with some stuff in the new year, so that's exciting. Other than that, I've just been getting back into the gym. That's really helped me out mentally and physically. Just getting in there and moving my body around a little bit, even though I'm not doing like crazy fucking, I don't know what kind of stuff I was doing when I was at my peak or whatever, but like I'm in there and I'm lifting weights for half an hour and I'm coming home and feeling great. So that's the main thing, right? So yeah, that's been really good for me. A fascist worked out today, did you kind of thing. So yeah, that's been feeling pretty good. And Soph, what about you?
Oh, a few different things. I wanted to say I've been following Corporation Manchester on Instagram, and I saw a like big community center meal thing they were doing, which looked really dope, and I hope that like you can be involved in stuff like that soon. What have I been doing? I've written some stuff. I'm finally like about to make my I mean not about to right now. It's 21st of December, the shortest day of the year, and we've got like Christmas and 4 days, but like when I'm after that, I'm gonna make my trans organizing video. I rewrote it a bit more for like more context of stuff that's been going on and just kind of tighten some stuff up. I'm feeling good about that. I had like did some planning stuff with comrades at the Harm Reduction Hub for like how we're going to train new volunteers, which is like quite an exciting process. I teach two of the like modules in the what I call woke school. I teach people about abolition and about sex work. And yeah, we're just doing some like reforms to the curriculum because it's like I think we've all agreed that we can be doing it better, and it's sort of it gets like iterated every time a little bit. We need to put bit more intention into it. Um, and I'm gonna be having a friend's Christmas potluck in the I don't know if other people call it this, but between Christmas and New Year, the Gooch of the year.
It's the gooch, yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna have a friend's Christmas potluck, and I've been planning that, and it's just, it's just nice to do community stuff. Speaking of which, like I've just been like, I was just telling the boys before the stream started, everyone. The community stuff's going well. I've been like making progress on resolving conflicts and also just having more people around, which is a nice and cool upward trend. Um, yeah, that's been me. There is other stuff but I can't really chat about. But that's at some point hopefully we'll be able I think I can share in some fashion. But we want to know what based things you, the audience, have been doing. Of course, you can message us all on social media, or you can send an email to based@redplanetshow.com. Include your name and pronouns, and if you're cool with it, we can shout it out in a later episode. We've done this before, and we've had some amazing, guests write in incredible stuff that they're doing. DIY HRT networks and community gardens and gun training. A huge range of different really based things that people are doing. But yeah, taking us into the news, this first story is going to be, I think, a little bit of a discussion because it's something just everyone has like infinity takes on, and I'm sure like Mule and Tim will both want to say that, but I can see Tim grinning already. But it's the Epstein files. Happy Christmas, everybody. We got the Epstein files, but we didn't. It's just a little bit of it. I think that it's worth telling people right away the kind of official term for a long time in discussing this is it's a limited hangout. We long-term Red Planet heads will be familiar with this term. The government, all states like love to control the flow of information, and sometimes when there's something that they really want people to shut up about, they'll give you a little bit of it and then be like, okay, there you go. We told you all about it. And that's exactly what they've done here. And they've done possibly the worst limited hangout in recorded history because they've released significantly fewer files than everyone knows there are after the Epstein Transparency Act was passed last month. And that basically gave the deadline of this Friday, 19th of December, to release them all. It was predictable that they were not gonna. It's still been funny because it just is incredibly obvious and damning towards Trump that they wouldn't release them all, and then when they have released them, like 90, Tim, you said it was like 90% of them have been redacted, I think.
Yeah, it's like wild. It's just, I mean, there's like pages and pages of just black bars, but then there's also just like it's really inconsistent redacting as well, which makes me think that they probably didn't actually think that they were gonna have to do this and like that it's rushed. But yeah, also just wild stuff like yeah, like the video, no, the files that there's obviously files missing, but there were files that they put up and then took
Yes.
down and
Yeah, I
like
was gonna
yeah.
say this. So there are 16 files that the DOJ did put up, and they implicated Trump, or some of them at least, like implicated Trump pretty fucking directly, and then like they've just taken them down. And I don't know if they've issued any kind of statement
Mm,
about that yet, but they
No.
just did the worst whoopsie
yeah.
possible.
Yeah, and some of them were really damning as well. Like there was a legitimate paragraph. I was watching Hassan's stream last night, and he did like a pretty long, kind of 4 hour look at it, and yeah, there was a pretty solid one of the documents where it was just basically saying, yeah, Trump was asking about this one girl, and then he said he wanted her, and then he said, can I get her? And then he got her, and it was like, oh. Right, so that's why they got rid
Yeah,
of
yeah.
that one. And I think some of them had like pictures of some stuff in there, and I think some stuff was redacted in a really interesting way as well. People are talking about the Michael Jackson picture,
Oh yeah.
Yes.
which,
So yeah,
yes,
to go over this a little bit, it's very obvious as well that the DOJ really wanted to highlight Bill Clinton. They've put out a lot of pictures where they've like a lot of pictures of Bill Clinton with Epstein. We can't say without like the full, as much information as possible. We can't say if like Bill Clinton was like closer with Epstein or whatever. It doesn't like exonerate Trump if Bill was like a better
Yeah.
friend to Epstein, but like that
It's
is
like
very much like what the
yeah,
DOJ has gone for. And
they're
as
pushing it.
Neil
They're
was
like,
alluding
oh, but
to,
Clinton was there too. It's like,
yeah,
yes,
exactly.
I hope that they both get
Yes,
like
yes.
the
Like
gunge with the acid in it. Like that's
yeah,
you
I
know.
I think it's just like the main takeaway I always just keep coming back to is just like the ruling class of pedophiles. Like it just really
Yeah.
is like they are just
Mm.
misogynist pedophiles. They
Yeah.
think women are property and they're pieces of shit. And you can't gotcha you can't get gotcha'd about Bill Clinton if you're a communist.
Yeah.
Because
It
people will just be
feels
like, well, what about Bill Clinton? Yeah.
yeah.
Like,
Well, it
yeah, fuck
really
that guy too.
the Bill Clinton thing particularly, it is so cynically what Trump has told the Department of Justice to do, because he has had the whole thing recently of the picture that came out where it looked like he was sucking him off, and he clearly was sucking him off, and also in sort of Trump's rhetoric about Democratic presidents. Obviously, Joseph Robinette Biden is not a great one, and neither is Obama. But Bill Clinton, I think, in Trump's mind, probably because he sucked him off, he thinks that everybody loves Bill Clinton. Like, and
Mm.
it's just this
Everyone
really
loves Bill
weird.
as much as he loves Bill.
Exactly, just this really like demented idea of what left wingers and Democrat supporters really like, and it's like, well, I can't get Obama involved, unfortunately, even though he's mentioned in an Epstein file about like,
Mm.
I think someone said. Oh, Obama wants to speak to Jeffrey about Epstein or something about that. I can't remember. I'm paraphrasing it there, but he is mentioned in it. But obviously, the for some reason Trump is like, well, the easiest person to implicate here is Bill Clinton, and obviously everyone loves Bill Clinton because he's got a massive dick. That's just normal, right? Um, yeah,
Because he
just
comes in you
bizarre.
so good,
He
obviously.
comes in you
Yeah,
really
yeah.
good in your mouth. There's loads of it.
Uh,
It's great.
but
But that's like
for
the
those
thing where it's like he is like Trump is so obsessed with celebrity and everything like that. And I feel like Clinton at the time was like, kind of like, like the people's president or whatever. So I think
Hmm.
it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
I think to me that is the biggest thing. It's always been for me like it's obvious that Trump and the Clintons have been friends in the past. They've been in
yeah.
the same social circles, and to him it's crystal clear that like they don't stand for any kind of like progressive values. They're just in the same circle as him, where like manipulating the poor into voting for you is a fun game you do sometimes if you want more power.
yes,
And like it's I think to him it's just because they are so much like the same. Yeah, that's what it is. But for those wondering, the Michael Jackson photo is that there was even a previously publicly available photo of Bill Clinton with Michael Jackson from something that, as far as I can tell, had nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein at all, and they included that in the release. So they've been trying to pad the numbers with more pictures of Bill Clinton,
Yeah.
which is pretty desperate.
it's weird.
Um,
I think that they redacted the faces of Michael Jackson's kids to like make them look like they were victims or something.
right.
I think that's something that some people have been talking about. There's like a version because obviously what I think that Trump relies on his base to obfuscate the truth so effectively through social media, and just like the muddying of the waters in the discourse. I think that he knew that stuff like this would just get out, and because it's so redacted, I mean, there's a large swath of his base that are obviously like pissed off about this stuff.
Mhm.
But I think that that's just what he's just going off like, I hope that the people who still love me are so delusional in their continued support for me that they will just come up with the most absurd stuff to cover it up for me. And I think that that's what
Yeah.
he's relying on. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that okay, so my two kind of closing thoughts here, I guess, are like one, as someone who writes about like epistemology and like how we know things, it's very interesting to me, and I've looked at a lot of conspiracy theories. Like there's this distinction that we make talking about misinformation between authorized and stigmatized knowledge, where like authorized knowledge, you get taught by the government, by journalism, by academia, by your school, by your parents, by your community in a very like, and sometimes these things won't all align, but like it's authorized knowledge. It's very mainstream. And then there's stigmatized knowledge, which is like, contains a lot of untrue stuff, but also contains a lot of true stuff that like, as it were, like they don't want you to know. And ever since like Trump, like Trump won certainly, but like Trump coming back into power especially has just like completely shattered people's consensus reality in the imperial core because like the strongest political powers are working as hard as they can into this like unreality, this complete like misinformation world, and like loads of yeah other powers like pillars of like trustworthy knowledge in society have to either pick whether they're going to like constantly swim upstream against the American government or try to like halfway lie in a way to make it comfortable. And it's these files, like I've been thinking of them as Schrodinger's Epstein files because like the fact that they've been like published by the government and all the journalists are like, yep, they were there they were. And then the government unpublished them again, makes them this. They did this little hokey cokey across the border between authorized and stigmatized knowledge. That's my one thought. My other
Nice.
thought is just like I think Trump is such a master of directing where people's attention is. He has such a reflex for it. Um, that like I'd be unsurprised if people are just like a bit tired of it by the time that we conclusively are like, yes, there's the evidence. He definitely is a massive pedophile, like we always knew. People will be like, yeah, but we always knew that. Um, I guess it relies at this point on like some kind of liberal trust the process mindset. Like we're gonna bring him to justice. We're gonna indict him. It's like he's got
Yeah.
all the guns in America. No, you're not. You're just not gonna until you have
Yeah.
all the guns.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like
Any other
yeah.
thoughts?
Well, on Hassan's stream yesterday, Ro Khanna was actually on there, and he's the Democratic side of the bipartisan Epstein transparency bill thing, basically. So it's him and Thomas Massey. Thomas Massey's the Republican side of it. And Ro Khanna, the thing is that he found it very, very easy on Hassan's stream to say things like, yeah, there's a genocide happening in Gaza. We've got to get these Epstein files out. We need to get good social policy for American people and stuff like that. And it's like, you're just stuck in this rut of the Democratic Party does not want to talk about that stuff. It doesn't want to address any of these things. And it's all well and good, a senior politician going on the most popular left wing socialist streamer on Twitch and saying these things. But I think that broadly speaking, there's a rot at the heart of the Democratic Party that you've quite rightly said is just this liberal desperation. Yeah, trust the process. This is how it's going to happen. And what really needs to happen is that there needs to be organizing in the USA to form a proper vanguard party, and it's difficult, right? Because you've got the DSA. And the DSA seems like the place where that would start, but they have such a strong tie to the Democrats, and actually trying to endorse Democratic candidates and stuff rather than trying to build a vanguard party. I think that it's kind of one of those situations where it's like in the UK we have this system now where oh shit, the two-party system has fallen apart, and there's the Green Party who are doing really well, and there's Reform who are doing really well. So, in the UK, we've kind of done away with the liberal centre and realised, oh no, yeah, it's just socialism or barbarism now. Like that's what it is. And I don't know what it's going to take in America to do that. And I think that it's super important that if any organizations are on the ground in the USA trying to build a vanguard party. Maybe it's not the Green Party, or maybe the Green Party turns into something good. I know that people criticize Jill Stein, quite rightly so, for like a lot of reasons. But maybe there's something new, and maybe there could be something better that happens, because it seems like, from what I can see, and obviously this is tangential. It's not really tangential. It's all related, but related to the Epstein stuff, you've got Nick Fuentes, the backdrop of all this. You got Nick Fuentes, who is solidifying his ideas about America first, and you've got Candace Owens, who is now the most popular right-wing pundit, who is on social media doing her own content creator. And these people are people who are openly anti-Semitic. They are openly fascist. They're openly Nazis. Candace less so than Nick. But they are creations of the Daily Wire and Turning Point and stuff like that. Like these people wouldn't have been like that if they hadn't have been encouraged by people like Ben Shapiro and Charlie Kirk. And these people are, you know, they're looking for a more radical right wing politics. They're looking for a more like, no, it's dead simple. We just deport everyone. We put black people in prison. And obviously, Candace Owens is not saying that, but Nick Fuentes certainly is. And I think that like that demand for a more radical right wing, it's there's certainly an appetite for a radical left wing in the USA, certainly, but it has to manifest into something. You know, these guys have got money behind them, and you know they could come up with a new political party. They're critical of Trump. They're critical of you know the state's relation to Israel. And even worse, Nick Fuentes is like, we shouldn't be giving Israel any money, but Israel are really cool, actually. They get to do an ethno state. Why don't we get to do an ethno state? So, you know, like that's where the rhetoric is going on the right. And it's because of this stuff. It's because of this lack of transparency around Epstein. It's because of the relations with Israel. It's because of the fucking shady dealings of the empire and stuff. So, yeah, there just has to be a solid left wing response. And I don't know what that looks like at the minute in the USA. But that's my take. It's not a great one, but yeah, it's just related to it, right? Tim?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like yeah, there's like a crazy moment with the right over there at the moment, where it's like, you know, like they have all the power, they have absolutely everything, but all the little freaks are like, why are our lives not materially better than we thought they were, like than what they told us it was going to be? So they're leaning into these more like radical and more extreme things because they're like, oh no, it wasn't just that Trump needed to drain the swamp. That was only part of it. Now we need to get rid of all the, you know, like the illegals and the foreigners and all this kind of stuff like that. And it's just like, you know, it's just going to be one thing after the other, and to, you know, like gradually expanding, like, you know, like state powers and all that kind of shit. And there is nothing in like, there's nothing following this thread that ends up with a better life for the working class, you know. There's
Yes,
absolutely nothing there. Yeah, you
exactly.
know, it's pretty fucking crazy. But yeah, there needs to be like mass organizing, and actually that's probably a good way to maybe even segue into our next story about Bolivia, where they are just on the precipice of an indefinite general strike, which is fucking amazing. It's happened before in Bolivia, famously back in the 50s. But yeah, the new right wing president, Rodrigo Paz Pereira, has slammed through a brutal, I'm going to try this, gasolinazo decree, which eliminates fuel subsidies, which will cause fuel prices to skyrocket by up to 162%. So, yeah, obviously, this is a classic neoliberal policy designed to offload the cost of the crisis onto the working class instead of the corporations responsible. Yeah, the transport unions and the Central Obrera Boliviana, the COB, have called an indefinite national strike, rightly refusing to negotiate while this decree stands, which is kind of amazing because they're not just like, these are, you know, like we want to, you know, like have a meeting and talk about this or whatever. They're just like, we won't even talk to you about this until you stop this, and then
Yeah,
we can negotiate, which is like fucking like big dog shit, you know.
that rocks. That's real,
Yeah, yeah,
real
it's fucking
power.
sick.
That's so
Yeah.
cool.
And because this is like, you know, literally like, yeah, it's a decree that affects absolutely every member of the working class, you know.
And this is
Yeah,
South America as well. I just really
yeah,
genuinely think Trump has no idea what he's getting into trying to go
exactly.
into
Yeah,
South America.
yeah. So yeah, so the unions have said that they understand, like rightly, that this isn't just about fuel, as it will directly affect every basic good and service that relies on fuel. So yeah, which will skyrocket the cost of necessities and disproportionately affect the working class, which, you know, it's like, for like, you know, wealthy upper class people or whatever, paying, you know, like twice as much for fuel probably doesn't affect them so much if they've already got like quite a lot of money in the bank and, you know, whatever.
Yeah, how
Whereas
much could
for
it be?
like,
$10?
Exactly. How much does a banana cost, But for the average person that, has to drive everywhere to work to survive and all this kind of stuff, it's obviously a huge increase. Also, like people running businesses, like small businesses where they're trying to, move things from place to place. Like literally everything relies on petrochemicals. That's the world that we have created. Well, they have created. We, we just got to live in it. So yeah, so this and it also just has like a bit of a double whammy effect of dismantling a lot of the social gains made under the previous Bolivian administrations. So they're kind of doing this whole thing about like they're calling it like, oh, we're ending corruption by getting rid of these like, these corrupt fuel subsidies. But really it's just kind of a way to hand over the public resources to private firms, which is like gnarly. But
I'm getting rid
yeah,
of
so
these. We're cutting back on these corrupt school meal programs and
yeah, exactly. Like,
hospital
yeah.
beds.
Um, but yeah, so and it's this thing where it's like the subsidies were being paid for by the government. So they're saying like, okay, cool, now it's like they're shuffling it onto the working class people. So they're like the price that fuel was that people were paying for fuel was like, it's obviously a government subsidy, so the government like paid like this amount of the full amount. Now people are going to be paying that full amount, and so they're saying that like, oh, this was like corruption, and this was like unfair that the previous governments were doing these deals with these companies and giving them all this public taxpayers money, like this kind of shit, which is really funny because it's like, oh well, now you're just taking the taxpayers money directly from the people that are paying the tax instead of giving it to the government in taxes and then a portion of that paying for subsidies. It's like, yeah, it's fucking wild. But it's the kind of thing that works if you're, stupid as fuck. It goes hard, I guess. So yeah, it's a pretty simple and necessary direct action that confronts the government, because it's kind of like, like we always talk about how hitting them in the pocket, or like, affecting governments and big businesses directly on their bottom line is usually the best way to actually kind of, to get their attention or to cause real change. So a general strike where it's like you literally grind the nation to a halt is like a really powerful thing, and it's notoriously difficult to pull off, to get all the, a lot of unions to work together to do all this kind of stuff. So it's actually really impressive that they're getting to do this. But yeah, and like this is like in one of the articles I was reading about it, they refer to it as engineered austerity, and that's like literally what it is. I mean, it's like most
Yeah.
austerity is engineered sort of
Yes.
thing,
Yeah.
but this
Yeah.
is a very clear and deliberate way of seeing it like very transparently. So yeah, but and I also love that it's an indefinite thing as well. They haven't just been like, oh,
Mm.
we're gonna do one day, or sometimes they'll say like, okay, it's just like on a weekend, or sometimes you'll see they'll be like, okay, every Thursday of this month we're gonna do
Yeah.
something. But they're just like, no, fuck it, we're just stopping. And like, and if you
It's the
want it,
big one.
yeah, exactly. So it's like, yeah, so the government has to drop this decree if they want the cogs of capital to keep spinning, which yeah, is interesting. We'll see how it goes. I
I
wouldn't
hope
be
we see a lot more
surprised.
of these.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there was some kind of military intervention, because that's kind of like par for the course, especially in, like Bolivia and stuff. But I think this is like a really powerful and real like kind of almost like tipping point moment for Bolivia. So we'll see how that develops. But Mia, why don't you tell us about what's happening over in the UK?
Yes, all good news, as I'm sure you can imagine. Recently, it towards the end of November. I think that this is something that we missed in talking about on Red Planet, but I think it's really important because it definitely pertains to what we are going to be talking about later as well, and that is that the UK
We
Justice
have
Minister.
we have
Go
touched
on.
on it a little bit before. That's all.
Okay. UK Justice Minister David Lammy scrapping trial by jury. So this is a proposal that he came up with, and I think it was a little earlier in the year. And of course, things that have been happening this year include things like prescribing a direct action group as a terrorist group. So that's the flavour with which I am providing you this story, the backdrop for it anyway. So, of course, being the ex-foreign minister, he's also culpable in war crimes and abetting a genocide, as per international law. He announced that he was planning to scrap the right to trial by jury for some criminal cases. It's being lauded by him as a solution to the huge backlog that courts in the UK are currently dealing with. Some cases going to trial have been delayed until 2028. But those experienced in the sector, however, are critical of the minister's decision to do so. Baroness Helena Kennedy Casey, a top barrister and Labour peer from the Law Reform think tank centre. So just to be clear, you know, this is a neoliberal piece of shit scum. She's a judge. She's a judge. She actually slammed him, saying, literally, quote, shame on him, when asked about this move. And later, when the interviewer from Times Radio was asking her questions, referring to his comments where he was justifying the move, saying that it's a slow process of justice for victims of rape and domestic abuse. She literally just said, quote, you could get their cases on faster by giving them the highest priority. End quote. Highlighting the fact that the reason that justice is so slow for these cases because they're not prioritized within the justice system, because we live in a patriarchal society, and rape and domestic abuse, you know, are things that overwhelmingly affect women, and women are not treated, you know, as real people in our society. So it is a completely horrific and just depraved way to justify you know, doing miscarriages of justice against the working class. Other critics, including the Criminal Bar Association and the Bar Council, said, quote, there is no need to curtail the right to a trial by jury, both from a principle and practical position. And Keir Monteith, who is a barrister who's continually criticised UK justice processes' institutional racism, said, quote, Lammy's 180-degree U-turn to replace juries with judges is not only unconstitutional and politically naive, but it will create further unfairness and miscarriages of justice for black and minority ethnic defendants, end quote. Of course, the more cynical of us will look at this escalation of state overreach in the most simple terms, which is that it is going to be used to silence political dissent. We've already seen judges in cases such as the challenge to the prescription of Palestine action be replaced with more pro-Israel and therefore more state-aligned judges. And of course, after pushback in the Commons, Lammy watered down his proposal to limit it to 3-year sentences and below. This is still a dramatic impact on someone's life. It's hardly something that should just be left up to a judge. What it means more broadly is that we're going to see people accused of petty crimes like theft and vandalism simply pushed into prisons without any right to a trial by jury, which will demand worse conditions inside of prisons as the UK simply outsources its prison service to French catering companies like Sodexo for Bronzefield in Surrey, and other private companies take on government contracts for various different prison services like transport and the like, making the injustices already present in the system far more stark. So obviously, at the moment, there is the trial to challenge the prescription of Palestine action, and we are going to be talking about the hunger strikers later on. And, you know, the cynical amongst us will look at this and say, well, yeah, this is just another example of state overreach. It's just another example of the state going like, people seem to be okay with these miscarriages of justice that are happening. Yeah, we're getting a little bit of pushback, but it's not something that we need to worry about. I think we could probably go a bit further. You know, it's the Labour motto and mantra at the minute, which is we need to go further and faster to deliver the change that the people of Britain want. So, yeah, it's really good stuff. I don't know if you two have any thoughts on this.
I mean, I think that I've been thinking a lot recently about like Malm's claim that like citizens of the Imperial Core, like the most valuable thing we have is like our lives and well-being, and we sort of put ourselves at the front line to do a most extreme protest. And like a lot of this thought is what spawned the like Extinction Rebellion, getting yourself arrested on purpose shit. And it just like Firstly, this stuff being in response to more protesting. And incidentally, this is a fun note. The Met Police just announced now. I was flipped off by a Met Police officer the other day. He was driving. That was a crime. Um, you're not allowed to make hand gestures while driving. Sorry. They've announced that they're going to arrest protesters for saying globalize the Intifada. Um, the fact that this is in response to protest just shows the need for some serious militancy. And I need to be so clear when I say this because there are so many people who are just like such losers who are like absolutely foaming at the mouth to be like a more violent kind of leftist. Militancy
Mm,
doesn't mean that. It means
yep.
like a military are disciplined. They march in lockstep.
Mm,
They have structures and protocols and they know how to operate as if they were operating with anybody, right? Like they could just randomize to different positions in their unit and carry out the same operation. That's the point. You're like relying on the structure rather than relying on like what kind of you can get done within your like social clique. Like we
mm,
need more people who are like being fucking serious as fuck about their organizing in the left across the imperial core because I think that's the only way that you get to situations like where you like in Bolivia where you can have an indefinite general strike is by having some militancy. Like militancy, I think is the
Yeah.
one. Yeah.
Well, the globalize the Intifada stuff is obviously completely cracked because again, it just shows the utter incompetency of the government because you could say people love to be like, oh yeah, well this is the police's idea, and it's like they're not going to have done this without consultation from the government.
mm,
It's so stupid to think that that's not happening. And the police, this just exposes the incompetency of the Labour government because the police have said, yes, we're going to arrest people for saying globalize the Intifada. The Crown Prosecution Service has said this does not meet the threshold for prosecution. You cannot prosecute people for saying globalize the Intifada. It is absolutely absurd. You're going to have to try and charge them with something else, and that's what it's going to be. They're going to try and charge, and it just again like it completely relates to what we're talking about here, which is like David Lammy is like, oh, the courts they're all backed up. There's so many cases and people aren't getting their trials until 2028. And it's like, yeah, that's because you keep arresting people for holding signs. You keep arresting fucking grandmas for sitting there with a big sign that says, please don't murder babies. Please don't sign a check for unlimited baby murder for an evil fucking genocidal political state. It's just so fucking cynical.
I appreciate that like organizing a jury can be a thing that can take some time. Like I do get that, but at the same time I don't know if this is like the biggest hold up. Like unless judges were just like looking at protesters and hearing absolutely no facts of the case whatsoever and just sending them right through. Like people have like constitutional rights to Britain doesn't have a
mm,
constitution, but like have people have rights to like a trial where they're heard out with in some cases like specified amounts of time that you can't like be like less than this amount of time for hearing out a case, even if it's really simple, just because like you have to hear the actual particulars of what's happened. I guess like from an abolitionist perspective, which is like where I'd like to approach stuff to do with the existing bourgeois legal system, like this will undermine public trust so badly, like
oh
so
yeah,
absolutely
100%.
direly. And like this is especially the thing Mule just highlighted, the conflict between the police kind of running amok and the Crown Prosecution Service. Like the police, one of the core, founding principles of the Met Police is policing by consent, which like as if like it's got a kind of nasty double meaning to it considering how many police officers are fucking rapists, but like the idea that they're going to like convince everyone that policing is something we chose, that it's something we want, that it's something that we're consulted on and that we really have a say in is how they're like trying to trap us into it. Like that and like encouraging us to think like cops and act like cops to each other, obviously. But just like the that just falls apart if we're not going to see a jury of our peers at any point. Like,
Mm,
if we're just not going to see a jury of our peers, then the police are just very obviously an armed militia and the violent wing of the enforcement of the will of capital. And at that point, like, yeah, you're just gonna have to get militant, I'm afraid. You're just gonna have to be not getting caught, not getting arrested, not getting tried, and maintaining the force that your organization has until you've achieved the goals that you're trying to achieve. And I think that, yeah, I think if we are losing trial by jury, and it's still a little bit of an if, but like if we are, uh, I think big prediction for next year. This was going into a new year. We're gonna just see a lot less spectacular protest and a lot of the same energy shift into people doing stuff that's like meaningful direct sabotage. Specifically in 2026 in Britain, we're gonna see this because people are gonna be like, I could go and like, I don't know, streak in the fucking snooker game and throw orange paint everywhere and then say I have all of the woke ideas and I'm the most woke and everyone will clap. Or I could be with several of my friends who would also be doing those actions and we together could be planning to do something that will like actually stop people dying. Like,
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do remember. Yeah, this is just kind of tangential. A while back, there was like a tweet that was going around it was like at a anti-ICE protest, and there was like a bunch of people protesting, and there was a woman at the front, and she was kind of like a bigger woman, and she was like standing arm in arm with all her comrades, preventing ICE from getting through. And all these people, and even leftists, were kind of being shit and being like, oh, oh, is this who's gonna defend us, is this some like the fucking militant comrades or whatever like that. And I remember commenting on it. I tweeted it, and it popped off a little bit, and I was just like, this is like a fucking disciplined fucking comrade here who is like standing arm in arm with a bunch of people that are fucking serious. It's like this is insane. Like all these people think that to be militant and disciplined and all this kind of stuff means that you look like fucking Rambo, and you're like, and you're like doing all these like kind of crazy, like you're doing commando shit or whatever like that. But it's like, no, militant can, like it's about being organized, and yeah, it's about like discipline and all this kind of stuff. But discipline doesn't necessarily mean having fucking abs. There's lots of people that are like super fit, but I would not want to do anything risky with them or whatever.
yeah,
It's like and yeah, obviously there's like all kinds of different things that like for a real revolutionary organization, there's like all kinds of different roles that people can take on and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, militant doesn't mean militaristic, I guess, or it doesn't
Yeah.
not
mean like
necessarily. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
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 Like it
Well, when you
obviously
think
can
about
like it can encompass these kind of things and stuff, but it's like I think more about the way that like it is when you think about people staging actions and things like that, like planning them, like this is like a serious operation we're
Mhm.
doing, regardless of like if it is legal or gray area or beyond or anything like that. But we're going to treat this like a serious thing, and we're all going to like do our parts, and we're all going to be equipped for what we need to do and stuff. Like it's yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean like I don't know. Yeah, it doesn't mean everyone goes out and buys guns and gets super ripped, and then we fucking do whatever. But,
Well, that's the key word that you use there, Tim, which is operation. Because if
yeah.
you think of it, you have to think about things in terms of operations. It's like, can your organization achieve an operation?
Mm,
And I think, as always, and of course, the broader struggle of Palestine is, what we're kind of referring to here as well. But if you look at the resistance on the ground in Gaza, you've got the resistance, which do very, very successful operations on an almost daily basis, even in latent periods. And the reason that they're able to pull those operations off is because they're disciplined. It's because they know what they're fighting for. They might have disagreements, but they keep things disciplined. And even when they were starving and unable to get the correct amount of nutrition, they were still able to pull off successful operations, just absolutely doming the IOF. And the reason that the IOF's operations don't work is because they just think being militant is, like you said, having a gun, being swole, like that's their whole fucking thing. It's just like, yeah, just look like this and look like that and act like this, and that's what being militant is. And just being a fascist, and it's like, yeah, no, actually, no, it's about getting the operation done. It's about thinking about all the different parts, all the different moving levers, and supporting each other and shit like that. But yeah, so I'm sure we're going to get onto more stuff like that in a bit. But Soph, why don't you tell us what is going on in Bangladesh?
Yeah, sure thing. So, Sharif Osman Hadi, who's a Bangladeshi revolutionary, has been assassinated. It's quite horrible news this week. Assassinated in Singapore. There have been fiery protests erupting across Bangladesh in response. Last year, in an uprising that has since come to be known as the July Revolution, a movement led by student activists in Bangladesh swept the country with popular protest. The prime minister at the time, Sheikh Hasina, used extreme political violence to put down the protests, killing over 300 people. But the outrage and public dissent only intensified until he was forcibly driven out by the Gen Z protesters. This is arguably like the first of the wave that we've been reporting on a lot this summer, was this one from last summer. Although, like, I think that the 2023, do we all remember like Sri Lanka and the footage that was like crazy of just like a swarm of people just like completely demolishing the presidential palace. There have been more and more, and it's been we've seen more and more each summer, I think. But Bangladesh was a big one. Hasina has been sentenced to death by Bangladeshi revolutionaries and is now living in exile in India. So, huge L there. Hasina, lol, Lamau, get wrecked. In the time since then, revolutionaries have been gearing up towards elections and implementing, a stable governmental structure and making serious reforms to address the issues of corruption, inequality, capitulation to India over the needs of Bangladeshis. I think that's an important one that we should get some more context on in a second in the discussion. But what's happened is that one of the very prominent protest leaders, Sharif Osman Hadi, more commonly known as just Osman Hadi, was going to be running to represent the Bijonnaigar area of the capital city of Dhaka. But this week, he was shot in the head by masked assailants while he was in Singapore and died shortly afterwards. Protests have erupted across Bangladesh in Hadi's memory, with popular sentiments aligning with his with his public legacy, his political thought, including Bangladeshi sovereignty and rejection of Indian hegemony. Muhammad Yunus, leader of the interim government, said in response to the assassination, "The country's march toward democracy cannot be halted through fear, terror, or bloodshed." I just immediately want to say about this, this does just feel fairly obviously like Indian interference. The BJP are a bunch of fash, and if you if you know anyone from Pakistan or like from Kashmir, like you just will be like, actually, like the Indian government are, I think that because of white supremacy, people from the leftists from the Imperial Core might be like quick to assume the best of like people of color around the world, and that's like not a bad impulse, but like it can't be overstated what fucked fash the BJP, the ruling party of India, are. And if people aren't familiar with the geography of the region, right? India is this like big country that was effectively designated as one entity by colonizers, and then around the edge of it, just got a ton of states that have broken off over time or had to have some amount of struggle, or in most cases are being in some way like quite brutally dominated by India. And the fact that Sheikh Hasina has fled from the revolution in Bangladesh to India to hide, that's very striking. And I think that there is just basically widespread consensus that yes, the BJP probably sent someone to kill Hadi.
And that's the best way to understand like the struggle in Kashmir as well, right? Like Kashmir is often like, spoken about as if it's like, this disputed territory between Pakistan and India, and it's like, yeah, there's absolutely people I think in Pakistan who are like, that's ours and we want it and yada yada yada, but the Kashmiri people are like, we want independence actually. We want to be able
Yeah,
to like not get bombed and shit by
no, I
all these
think that
various different parties.
I don't know the specific history of repression of Islam in Bangladesh, but like Islam versus Hinduism is like a very, very prevalent struggle culturally, like across this whole region because of India's like Hindustan supremacy kind of like
Yeah.
political ideology, and like that's very present in Kashmir, like the the yeah, while Kashmiris don't want to be Pakistani instead, like the alignment there is with other like Muslim nations and communities and cultures that India has tried to repress and dominate. Um, and yeah, I mean, I think that in terms of in terms of the protests that are erupting now, like we will t only time will truly tell. But you're looking at a country that last year had a popular young revolution uh, where people were on the streets, people were storming the, you know, the houses of power and driving out like the leader of the country into exile, into fear, like into, you know, being in hiding, and and a huge component of this is that the population you're trying to politically repress are Muslim, and then you've killed one of their popular leaders. I don't think this is going to go well for
Nah.
like the Indian like interference here. I don't think that I think this is like you know, I think primarily what I think is, you know, is Osman Hadi rest in power, and um you know, may everyone be like blessed by his memory, and I think people should look into more into him and like his role in what he's, you know, what he's done and things he said, because he's, you know, an interesting figure. But I think that in terms of like the effect this is likely to have on things, like they've really reinvigorated the Bangladeshi revolutionaries by doing this, and really like made anti-Indian sentiment much, 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 much stronger in a country that is like I think like 97% Muslim. Um, so yeah, unless anyone else has any thoughts on Bangladesh, Tim, why don't you tell us about Pam Bondi?
All right. So, yeah, this is kind of, yeah, I mean, this is pretty wild. This is at the it's yeah, it's one of those things that is like very dubious about what will actually happen with this. Kind of like some other stuff we're going to talk with a little bit later. But Pam Bondi, U.S. Attorney General, has instructed the FBI to place cash bounties on trans activists, labeling them domestic terrorists. So I think she said like the exact wording is something like violent activists promoting gender ideology or something like that, which is like kind of like, you know, it's like such a vague kind of weasel wordy um definition that just leaves it wide open, right? You know, so yeah, it's a huge escalation of the state-sanctioned persecution of trans people. Yeah, directly using the powers of the carceral state to criminalize and hunt down an already incredibly marginalized community, uh, basically just for like kind of political point scoring. So yeah, it's based on this kind of manufactured idea of transgender violence. You know, like anytime there's like a mass shooting event, you'll see like these freaks on Twitter be like, "Oh, you know, like, but is this another trans person or like whatever?" Or like there's like this myth that there's all these trans people that are, you know, doing all this kind of violence all the time, which is just not backed up by statistics or anything. It's like just like not a real thing, but it's become a real boogeyman. So yeah, so the dumbest people you know will be fucking frothing at the mouth over this. But yeah, and like obviously something that has been debunked like, you know, over and over again. So yeah, this is just again like a bunch of stuff we've already talked about and a bunch that we're going to continue to talk about. It's a fascist power consolidation tactic. So they have invented a threat from a vulnerable minority, which then they can use to justify violence and an increase of state powers initially against this scapegoated minority before eventually just wielding them against fucking everyone, you know? Um, so yeah, it's part of Trump's broad kind of enemy within strategy, which is like incredibly just like fascist from top to bottom, you know. So it's yeah, basically designed to silence all political opposition from from leftist to LGBTQ plus people. It shows how capitalist states will like readily abandon any pretense of liberty, freedom, anything to protect the actual state, and attack those who challenge the kind of the existing hierarchy. Um, yeah, it's one of those things. It's like trans rights has become this gigantic wedge issue when it's like really just like not an like it's just not an issue it's not an issue that people should be caring about whatsoever, aside from whether or not trans people have everything they need to live full and dignified lives. Like that's the real trans rights discussion. But yeah, instead it's obviously become this like just this insane thing. Well, every week we're waking up to see more, right-wing white Christian dudes mowing down fucking crowds of people, schools, whatever. Um, they all just want to sit and pretend that it's like, that it's trans people that are behind all of this. But yeah, so Pam Bondi's wants to place cash bounties out there so that like bounty hunters and any fucking freak that wants to pick up that incredibly fucked mantle will be incentivized to go out and target trans activists, which can be the weasel wording of this kind of what you said. It's kind of like this could just be any trans person. This could be just like some freaks down at the mall and he sees a trans person and goes like, sick, cash bounty. And it's like, especially in times when of economic precarity, I think stuff like this is just like asking for an insane amount of trouble. Like there's going to be some, like some like like how those guys in high school that are just like fucking losers, always like cooking up some scheme about like they're gonna go do a fucking ram raid or a robbery or some shit like that. Now it's like, it's incentivizing them to go out and harass trans people, even like if they're not actively able to pursue these bounties in any way or whatever, like if they're not like they don't fit the criteria to actually qualify for that, it's still going to mean the dumbest people are going to go out there and try some shit, so it's just
Yeah.
adding to this like increasingly hostile atmosphere against trans people.
I think you said earlier, like about like trans rights and like trans people getting what they need is like the real trans issue here. And I just want to say, like, um, I think that the real trans issue is patriarchy, and I think that the real issue is that like um, we on the left have approached a situation where like we genuinely start to like deconstruct gender a little bit and like people's gender presentation we recognize as being like yeah, it has some cultural associations like but we can get to a place where it doesn't like give you power over other people.
Mm.
There's a lot of work to do to get to that place, but we're starting to see it. Like that's what we can envision by accepting that like people can change gender, people can change sex. Like
Yeah.
gender is not like the cis normative hetero binary, all of this stuff. And that is actually very threatening to a patriarchal state. Like I don't think
Mm.
that trans people existing is like such an epic slay that like we're just gonna like immediately destroy the patriarchal world, or it
Yeah.
would have already happened, right? But I think this comes back to like the violence of the fascist world, like the fascist world involving just more like literal punching. Like a lot of these people, really a ton, have just talked about how they think that the ideal situation for trans people, like people will get like very scared and panicky and not be thinking usefully politically and talk about camps. But when then you look at what
Mm.
people are saying, and it's like, yes, there are some people who are talking in this fashion. A lot of them are saying, however, that they wish the world was like the 50s and that when someone saw a trans woman, they would all just beat the shit out of her and until she just goes away and hides and disappears because they just want to like drive us out of public life. They just want to like basically like use literal physical violence, like just their fists to make it so that the world appears how they think human beings naturally are. You know, the white cis heteropatriarchy, nuclear family, all this shit. And I think that, yeah, I think that trans people are like exactly as you said earlier, like it's a trial of a technology.
Yeah.
Because if it's publicly accepted that we deal with all the gender freaks by just punching them until they go away, then that's how we can also deal with the women who try to be treated like humans, and how we can
Mm.
deal with the men who try to ally with women, and so on. That's my take.
Right. Well, maybe that's and similarly, Mule, do you want to tell us about what old US Senator Mike Lee is proposed?
Yeah, it's all good stuff from America. Uh, this is this is just absolutely crazy, and this is actually the first time I'm learning about this in doing this story today. To stop the alleged drug boats that Trump has been bombing in the Caribbean with complete impunity. GOP lawmakers are wanting to license privateers, aka capitalism returns to its piratical origins. U.S. Senator Mike Lee has introduced a bill to essentially legalize private mercenaries against alleged drug cartels using an old letter of marque law from the pirate hunting era. This is a wildly dangerous proposal that would hand state-sanctioned violence over to unaccountable corporate actors. Important to remember that when you think about pirates and what we think of collectively in our collective knowledge as pirates is that a lot of pirates were like slaves who stole the boat from their captors and went around the Caribbean and, made a life for themselves or tried to get back home or whatever. And there were various different kinds of pirates and stuff like that. And of course, there was privateers. This is kind of what this is echoing. Privateers are like, people from the colonies, people from the USA, people from Mexico, people from various different colonies who would be there hunting pirates because, of course, you can't have anyone having any kind of autonomy in doing what they want, even though that's the kind of world that you're trying to build where you could just do whatever you want, but other people can't. So yeah, important to remember, there was never sort of like a clear demarcation of like every pirate is a bad, evil person. It's like, yeah, some of them were probably terrible, but some of them were probably really sound. And if you met them nowadays, you'd be like, oh yeah, this guy's a communist. But anyway, coming back to this, it's alleged that so-called cartels are importing massive amounts of fentanyl into the USA via sea on small fishing vessels. So that's the whole thing that Trump and his admin are saying is the evil thing that's happening. Even though they've also said various other things like Maduro has massive cocaine factories. Or I think he might have said that about Petro. I think he might have said that about Colombia, actually, that they have massive cocaine factories in 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 Colombia. And so it's just say anything, really, to be honest. But I think that the current line is that it's fentanyl, and that's because everybody in the USA has had their consent manufactured to fear fentanyl. It's the magic drug that makes police officers go into comas as soon as they come within 2 meters of it.
It's basically the scarecrow gas from Batman Begins.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what fentanyl is.
I feel like that's exactly what they've kind of played on. They've played on these kind of like pop culture ideas of this like magical super evil drug that is like can kill you instantly, but somehow also people are just like consuming it every day, and it's odd.
That's how hardcore we are.
Every single clinic and hospital across the country. It's just
it's really normal. It's a really normal
like
drug.
It's literally a painkiller drug that is found everywhere and is not like it's nothing like it's relatively pedestrian as far as that kind of stuff goes.
I think another thing to remember is that the last time that you probably will have heard Trump talk about fentanyl in any depth is when he had the trade negotiations with Xi Jinping and China, when they were talking about fentanyl sales into America. And so, clearly, even if you look at the rhetoric of Trump, there are statements where he has spoken about fentanyl as a drug that is necessary to get into the USA because it's a medical drug and you need it for medical
Yeah.
applications. Whereas at the same time, these people bringing it from South America are evil drug pirate terrorists, narco
Yeah.
terrorists, and they're killing everybody. So yeah, it's this absolutely right, Tim. It's this absolutely bizarre, evil, yeah, and yeah, almost like what you said, Soph, like the scarecrow drug from Batman Begins. It's
Mm,
just it's so wacky,
yeah.
how they've made this sound. Um, but yeah, it has nothing to do with drugs or the safety of American citizens. It's just about creating a legal framework for privatized war and resource seizure. It's a massive handout to the military, industrial, and private security complex, letting them profit from new endless war while operating with complete impunity, which also means that things like war crimes will be far more prevalent and far more sanctioned, signed off by, because if it's not a state doing the war crimes, then it's just going to be a private company and, limited liability, etc., just declare yourself bankrupt and, throw someone under the bus that wasn't really that involved. That's how it goes with corporatism. I mean, that's kind of what the state does whenever it gets called out anyway, but, I think that it's going to be easier to do it if it's just corporations. Yeah, this is the logical, horrific endpoint of capitalist imperialism, the state outsourcing its most violent functions to for-profit entities. It will inevitably lead to massacres, destabilization, plunder in Latin America, all while further militarizing the border and society at home. It's a recipe for war crimes, corporate enrichment. Trump has been leaning very heavily on rhetoric built up in the war on drugs campaign, which stigmatizes the imperial periphery countries for their associations with the drug trade and allows space for further border militarization. And the White House this week has also designated fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction, which further raises questions about the fact that they wanted to negotiate fentanyl being brought into the United States
Yeah.
when they were negotiating with China. So, what is it, Trump? Do you want to bring more weapons of mass destruction into the United States?
Exactly. And like, what is this? Like, the thing that I think about, and I was talking about this on Twitter the other day, is like, what does this mean for, like, okay, so the real fentanyl cartel is the Sackler family, and this has been like proven in court that they basically engineered the opioid crisis and they've like profited off of it intensely. They've like, and there's been all kinds of like legal maneuvers that have been pulled by them, but it's basically like, they were found guilty of kind of, yeah, of creating and profiting hugely from moving opioids onto the streets and making things like turning or making people reliant on drugs like fentanyl and all this kind of stuff. So like, I mean, it's not their yachts that privateers are going to go out and fucking commandeer, like, or
If fucking
like
only the
that
narco
would
terrorism
be
is coming from inside the state.
exactly like that's the
Also,
thing, right?
just a shout out to Ronnie here. Like Donald's favorite president so far, Ronald Reagan, did
Yeah,
the entire Iran Contra
yeah, yeah, yeah.
scheme, and it's just like it just goes on and on.
Like that's
He,
like
yeah,
the United States is the largest fucking drug cartel in the world, It's like it's
yeah.
insane. And yeah, like, even just like the whole thing about how like fentanyl isn't like a thing that really comes in through these countries overseas or whatever like that. It's usually like they just get the precursor ingredients through actual
Yeah.
pharmaceutical supply sources or other things and then manufacture it either domestically or sometimes in Mexico and just like sneak it over the border and stuff like that. Like it's not something that comes by a boat, like these like small fishing boats. Like no one is gonna take an incredible risk like that to just move a small boat, like a fishing boat full
Literally.
of product. Like it's just, especially something that can be produced domestically, like there's no point to that. It's, yeah, it's a
Yeah.
scam. And it's like, yeah, it's obviously just like it obviously just plays into all the wider narrative about like, like attacking Latin America, getting
The war on
our
drugs,
oil
yeah.
back from Venezuela or all that
Right,
kind of
yeah, the
shit,
oil.
it's like,
The oil stuff is crazy because he's just
yeah,
being so loud about it. And I know the phrase like saying the quiet part loud has been done to death in the Trump era, but like that
mm,
is crazy how much he's been
yeah.
saying it.
Well, yeah, because it's like,
It's our oil.
yeah.
They took it from us.
Well, that's the thing. So, like, that whole thing is based on, like back in like what was it, like the early 90s or whatever, when it was like American companies owned the contracts to the oil in Venezuela, but then, those contracts were canceled and the oil reserves were nationalized. So it's like them being like, actually, fuck off. We're not gonna sell these to you. So to America, they're like, oh, that's ours. We bought that. They
Right.
they stole it from us, sort of thing. When
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like, really, it's like, no, like, like if anything, you guys, well, your companies pushed in like fucking mafia style and tried to take over. And
Yeah.
then, the country, our people, we stood up to you and told you to fuck off. But,
It's like
yeah,
Chavez, was very big on that concept of how do you describe it? The oil as a tax on the first world, and just
yeah,
like
Yeah,
getting wealth out of the imperial core by charging what you can for what
yeah, yeah,
resources you
absolutely. Yeah.
own. And this is something that's been common across basically every socialist leader in a country in the imperial periphery who has anything to sell to the imperial core. And we're seeing the enormous success of it with China, obviously. But I think that all I just wanted to say that sorry, and this feels like a revenge there, where there's some consciousness with American conservatives that they were profiting more before. Some of that money has been able to be squeezed like the other way and has been benefiting Venezuelans. And they want to like punish them for that and take the money back. It's our oil.
Mm,
But the thing I wanted to say briefly was just like working with vulnerable communities and drug users, especially through the harm reduction hub, which is like so initially, in its origin focused around drug users. It's just like everyone who takes seriously like the work to be done around drugs is focused on overdoses first and foremost. Like
yeah,
even the Human Rights Watch report on the fentanyl as weapon of mass destruction, ridiculous executive order. Like the subheading is like overdoses need public health action, not militarized law enforcement,
yeah,
because it's like you immediately just have to go, okay, well, drug policy is just fucking fake. Like there is actually nothing like evil and immoral about drugs to begin with. It's just people like doing something they find fun. The
yeah,
problem is that it could lead to an overdose. And when you're looking at that work, like the very first thing that you see is just like, wow, the war on drugs has been an absolute nightmare in terms of overdose prevention and in terms of like being able to make people safer. And every single step the entire time that is justified on the logic of like they are sending us drugs that's making our citizens overdose. It's like you could be doing almost the perfect opposite. I mean, if you were welcoming that product into your country and like regulating and partnered with these businesses and working together in the supply of it, you would literally be that would be the thing that would be like lowering the number of overdoses because you would be like conscious of and regulating and measuring, the flow of the product into your country.
exactly.
Like
Yeah,
it's insane.
it's so deeply cynical and ridiculous and annoying, and it does feel again like I was talking earlier about the Epstein files and Trump thinking about what he thinks is popular and what Democrats think are popular and what he likes. And of course, as you mentioned, Ronald Reagan was doing this whole shit. Back in the day, the war on drugs, DARE program, and all that stuff. Like that was all Ronnie Reagan. And this is, it's like Trump just wants to do that stuff. He thinks that that's what you do when you're a popular president. You just like you talk about drugs, you bomb South Americans, you fucking fuck around and just say whatever the fuck you want, basically. So it's really cool for everybody that that's what's happening. So yeah, there is no evidence of any fentanyl being moved into the United States on any of these boats. Many of the boats that have been targeted in open water have appeared to be small fishing vessels, and in fact, the
yeah.
families of those fishermen or fishing people, like I assume there's more than just men on these boats, have come forward and said we want justice because these are our families. They were out finding food, they were out working so that we could survive, and they've been accused of being narco terrorists, and now they're just dead. And not just dead, but like it's not just like they shot the boats
Mm,
and then let them fend for themselves. It's like they've double tapped some of these boats.
Yeah.
where they've bombed them. There's been people scrambling around trying to save their own lives, and then they bombed them again to make sure that they are dead.
Yeah.
It is absolutely horrific. I think the number is almost 100 now. 100 people killed by the USA in the Caribbean, off the coast of Venezuela.
Yeah. And the other thing as well that I thought was interesting is that there has been, with a lot of these boats that have been bombed and stuff, there's been no actual they haven't actually shown that they have investigated these boats or know anything about what is on them or anything like that before bombing them either. They just kind of bomb them and go, oh, it's a drug boat. But it's like, based on what? Like, they haven't been able to provide anything either. They haven't been able to go like, okay, well, we have an intelligence report. We have, people that worked at the dock. Nothing like that. Like, absolutely nothing. They're just like, oh, there's a boat. It's a drug boat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really good, normal stuff. And with that, that is the end of the news segment. And we are a show, Red Planet. That's what we are, in case you didn't know what was happening, what you were experiencing right now. What this is called is a show. And in order to make the show happen, we actually need your money. And what you do to give us your money is you go to www.patreon.com/red_planet. There are various different tiers at which you can support us. And you can have a look at that there and get some more details there and give us money. And you should do that because we're good and we don't survive without you and your generous contributions. So main topic segment today, we are going to be talking about the hunger strikers in the UK at the moment. And I know that this is something I've been speaking about at length this week. Sophie, I don't know if you had anything that you wanted to start us off with to kick off this segment.
Honestly, I think that I mean, I have thoughts, but I think they may be better as discussion thoughts. So since you've been covering it, maybe you should intro the general context first.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. The hunger strikers in the UK are Palestine Action prisoners of the Filton 24 and the Bryce Norton 5. So there are 8 or 9, and it's hard to know at which day all of them are on, but they're all at roughly 50 days at this point that they have not eaten, and their health is incredibly poor. They have been ignored by the government. Their families have sent letters of concern and even, confronted David Lammy, the Justice Minister, ex-Foreign Minister, in the street to tell him what is happening. He has denied any knowledge that it has been happening, which is, of course, a lie. It really just looks at this point like the state is willing to let these people die. There's many thoughts that I have about it, and there's many thoughts that I'm sure that other people have about it, and it's overwhelmingly sad. I think the key thing to remember here is that this has been obviously born out of desperation, and I think another important thing to remember is that this is not necessarily an action that has been coordinated by Palestine Action or by any other organization. This is something that the prisoners have decided to do. Some of the prisoners decided to do, and other prisoners decided to join in solidarity. So there's a lot going on. And I think that there's a really important conversation that we need to have here. It's got echoes of the hunger strikers from the H blocks in the north of Ireland, Bobby Sands, Joe McDonnell, and the other people who went on hunger strike there because they were too incarcerated without reason or without trial. It's got echoes of that, and the British state is not necessarily sympathetic to stuff like that. So that's the introduction. The names I'm gonna get for you as we speak of the people who are on hunger strike.
And we should definitely tell our audience this week as their homework to do the things that you can do to support them when we get to that, because there are steps you can take, especially if you're in the UK, but there are international toolkits available as well. I think one other piece of context for like something I want to discuss is like one hunger striker in particular was reaching a point where she was just gonna die. and needed immediate medical care, and the police were like stopping ambulances. They were holding back protesters who are protesting outside the prison. This is something that I've been like, I've known people who were involved and who were there, right? This has like been something that was quite large, and a lot of the kind of, UK left activist community, like there have been people from there going down and persistently trying to do something to help. Um, because I think that like first thought, we've been saying since the beginning of the show, at some point the job of the cops becomes so obviously just the most hideously vile things possible. Like there is this model that the Marxist geographer Stuart Hall talks about, this idea that people have of the policeman as like friendly, benevolent pseudo patriarch, and it's this sort of like small English town where there's a little duck pond and a green, and there's like a greengrocer and a postman and a fireman,
It's
and then
Postman
there's the
Pat.
policeman, right? It's very Postman Pat, literally,
Yeah.
and like the in this situation, like the policeman might like give you directions or like help you out if you look concerned or lost, and he might stop you getting into any trouble or tell you off if you're naughty. And it's like this, I think, for a ton of people is at the core of why they want to be a police officer. There are some people who have like a deep fucking sickness. Like they really have the cop brain,
Mm.
and the cure to their disease is an AK-47, the medicine that the Soviets invented to remove fascism from the body. But but there are but there are some people, and I think a lot of people who like have some kind of very quaint idea, and this is what Stuart Hall said, is that this idea, if it existed, maybe existed for a glimpse in some like rural small town communities in England in the like 60s, maybe. Like just maybe. But like what we have now is just so powerfully not that, and like so antithetical to that like propaganda, quaint, perfect ideal of policing, that now you are you are a police officer, you are outside a prison, you are fighting protesters because what has happened is that there has been a genocide we have all seen. We have all seen it happening for 2 years on our screens. Like, we've watched people pleading for their lives, we've watched children blown to bits, we've heard about the horrible things that Israel does. And our government has prescribed a group who didn't even hurt anyone, who literally were doing like spray painting on stuff. They've called them terrorists. There are a bunch of people who've been arrested. They haven't faced trial yet, and they've just been in prison ever since. And they are now on hunger strike saying our group shouldn't be a prescribed group, and you should treat us better. And the government is saying no. Your job, we're now back to you, the police officer. Your job is to stop an ambulance getting through so that that person will die. We want to make sure that person does die. Like, that is completely fucking insane. And I think that this brings me on to my other kind of thought, which is kind of more related than I thought, is like it's very, very boomer, right? To make this kind of phrase, but the soul of the nation, right? I think if ever this had like a validity to it, this case where we're talking about like we all see a genocide happening. Some of us are brave enough to fucking act. The action itself isn't even a violent action, and these people are being treated as subhuman, like filth, to be exterminated by our government. And in this way, like the genocide is coming very immediately home, because the complete dehumanization, the complete and utter like disregard for the basic dignity and life and well-being of people who support Palestinians as if they themselves have entered the same class as Palestinians, right? What the Israelis would call cockroaches and vermin. They're just like the way that you are unpersoning these people, and meaning that like any treatment is acceptable, being held for years without any trial or glimmer of justice and treated in the most despicable, hideous ways is okay, because you are allied with the power that is doing the genocide. And that's just like, yeah, like again, if there is ever a validity to the idea of like the soul of a nation, like the moral core of British society, such as there could ever be one, it's like it's laid so bare by this. This is so, yeah, I that's kind of the gist of my thought. I just like this is the struggle we're in right now, and I think that like I I'm always kind of baffled by like how cops sleep at night. I think they probably have to drink a lot. Most cops I've known have had to just drink a lot. Um, but yeah, it's just so grim to imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the names of the people who are currently on hunger strike, the person that you were referring to, so was Kessa Zuhra. She is still on hunger strike, day 50, about to go into day 51, literally at 21 hours and 30 minutes. There is a counter on the website prisonersforpalestine.org. There's also Amu Gib, who is also on day 50. Then we've got Hiba Moraisi, who is on day 49. So just a day behind Amu and Kesser. Then we've got T. Hocha, who is on day 43. Kamran Ahmed on day 42. And Louis Chiaramella, who is on day 28. Umer Khalid ended his on day 13. And John Kink, who joined in solidarity, he ended his on day 41. So there are currently 6 who are still on hunger strike at this point.
One
Now,
thing that I think is just like as a quick little aside is interesting is that Gandhi's most famous hunger strikes were only for 21 days.
yeah,
Like, you know, and those are the ones that have like gone down in history as these like really extreme protest events, you know, and so some of these protesters have been doing it for more than twice that time, you know, like
yeah.
even
But
some of the ones that have stopped already, they did it for longer than Gandhi did, you know.
Yeah.
isn't that so indicative of our entire time, right? Like one of the most famous protest images of the entire 20th century is a self-immolation. And like Aaron Bushnell, like did it as part of there was actually a string of people self-immolating in response to the genocide in Gaza, like in the same way as you're saying, like this is like already twice as long as like Gandhi's
Yeah.
hunger strikes. Like we're just the all of the protests that rely on there being any moral core whatsoever to the ruling class. We're doing them like multiple times as much right now. And it's just like, no, there is none. There is no moral core. There is nothing there.
No.
Yeah.
So I think the important thing to get out of the way, because I know that some people who are going to listen to this show are going to be, organizers, people with experience in organizing. Maybe some of you listening to the show know people who are tangentially related to these hunger strikers, or at least know people who are tangentially related to the people who are organizing to support them and stuff like that. And there has been a whole variety of criticism regarding this. People have been saying, why would you do a hunger strike? Why would you appeal to the state that is so clearly, ignorant and not going to listen to you? Why, would you look at the way that they've been complicit and participatory in nature to the genocide in Gaza and think that another 8 lives are going to be the thing that makes them go, oh no, actually we shouldn't do this. I think it's really important to take like a step back, and that's why one of the first things that I mentioned when introducing this is that this is not something that has been organized by a broader organization. This is not something that has come out of a political idea or a political plan. There are certainly elements that you could criticize. You could certainly criticize, for example, alongside this, the appeal to deprescribed Palestine action. This may seem controversial to some people who listen to the show, but maybe I would agree with that, because what's the point when you can just do direct action under another organization's name? Palestine Action is not necessarily an important name to save. You could just do direct action and you're not part of the terrorist organization, and that would be the end of that. But the key point that I'm trying to make here is that hunger strike is not generally speaking, something that people do lightly, and it is not necessarily something that people do, as a way that they do think that they will get the attention of the state. And I want people to really do something now that you probably haven't done, that you think you might have done, but you've not. And that is to actually put yourself in the shoes of these prisoners. And when I say put yourself in the shoes of these prisoners, I really want you to think about their age. These people are literally aged 19 to 28. I think that's the maximum age. These are young people. They were politicized by the genocide in Gaza. So, they saw these images of a violent rogue state acting with impunity, murdering children, murdering babies on a daily, hourly basis, getting away with it, and also doing untold, torture to a populace of people, and escaping any kind of justice. So think about the fact that is how they were that's how they were politicized. That's how they decided to take this direct action, which they're being accused of, which is dismantling a weapons factory, which is it's a pretty bold action to take. And then I think that it's important to look at the broader direct action history of Palestine Action, because you've got a large amount of activists and organizers who've engaged in direct action who have escaped charge, and they've escaped prison. I don't mean they've been in prison and escaped. I mean they've escaped without a conviction. They've not been prosecuted, right? We've actually had one on the show, and people can go back and watch that episode and listen to what Drew was saying about his participation in Palestine Action. He was saying, I'm certain that this is the time I'm going to get sent away. And he did not. And I am convinced that Kesser, Amu, Heba, John, Louis, Umer, all of the Filton 24, and all of the Bryce Norton 5, from what I know of them, they are first-time direct actionists. They're all young. This was the first act of extreme protest that they got involved with, and every single one of them was violently taken from their home in the middle of the morning at 5 a.m. by counter-terrorism police and thrown in a cell, not told anything, having to speak to their lawyers every, 3 days or so. What's going on? Don't know. I'll have to get back to you. Okay, what's going on now? Sorry, don't know yet. Still don't know what's going on. Don't know when my trial is. Don't know what's it. These people are going to be a degree of suicidal, genuinely suicidal, and desperate, and hopelessness, is going to be overwhelming them. And what I mean by that is that, like, when someone engages in a hunger strike, it is like the final thing that you think you can do to be like, this is unfair. You're just saying this is unfair. It's like Sophie said, it's as simple as the organization that we were part of should not be a terrorist organization, but it is also like, we shouldn't be treated like this. People should just not be treated like this. And they probably think, I would be surprised if it was not the case for a lot of them, that they all think that they are going to spend the rest of their lives in prison, and that they probably won't have a trial, and they won't have any chance of parole. And that is because they understand that the thing that they've been politicized with is the way that Israel operates with impunity, the way that the Imperial Corps in the UK supports that state to operate with impunity. And they are thinking, it's over. I might as well die. I'm going to die. And I won't suffer, because the state is going to make me suffer. And there are obviously political demands, but I would be very, very surprised if there wasn't at least an element of that is happening in their minds. So, when people are criticizing and saying, what's the point in doing a hunger strike? And I'm not talking about, right wingers or conservatives. I'm talking about, there are leftists who are saying, like, what's the point in this? And it's like, they're not thinking more broadly about that. They are in prison, and not just in prison, but they are on remand. Like, there is, I think, I was reading something, and I can't remember when it was, but it was really insightful about the not knowing how long you are going to be in prison, and how that is a form of torture. And I think that that's something that really bears focusing on when thinking about this, and thinking about the absolute desperation, like to have refused food, like exactly what you said, Tim. Gandhi's hunger strike was 20 days. Kessa Zura, Amu Gib, Hiba Moresi, T. Hocha, Cameron Ahmed, they're all on day 40 to 50. 40 to 50 without food is crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And I don't know, maybe they've been to the hospital on the days when they've been when the police or the prison services force them to go to hospital, maybe they have injected them with nutrients to stop them from dying. I don't know. If that's like that's the difference there. They've been able to maintain it for that longer, but it doesn't really matter because it's like the length of time should be enough to make people go, oh my fucking God.
Yeah. There is like precedent for during hunger strikes in the past, like people have been force fed with like tubes and stuff. I'm not sure exactly what the situation is here, but yeah, there are things like that definitely do happen to people protesting, and there's like the kind of thing as well where they can be held. So you can be hunger striking, and then when they say, okay, cool, this is actually a hazard to your health, you are attempting to commit suicide. So that means that we have the rights to do this to you, where, then they can like take them and, place them into a mental health facility where then they can be like, heavily medicated, restrained, all these kind of things that, that opens up a whole other different kind of thing. So these are all things that they are, putting themselves at risk at by doing this protest.
Yeah, it's really deep, and I think that it's super important to highlight some of the things that the prisoners themselves are actually saying. So there are things that have been written, and I'm going to just read a couple of them out, but you can read them for yourself at prisonersforpalestine.org. You can read the solidarity statements there. But let's read this from Amu Gibb. And of course, this gives you more of an insight as to why Amu has particularly gone on her hunger strike. So she says, 30 detainees across immigration detention centers have been on hunger strike since Monday to protest their imminent deportation. The people filling the pockets and beds of these privatized hellscapes are relied upon to keep detention centers running, while infamous security contractors turn a profit from the suffering of migrants. Serco is one of the companies that the UK government contracts to run its detention centers, a company that doesn't just circle around misery like a vulture in our bloodstained skies, but actively participates in the war machine, which leads many to seek safety in one of the places these weapons came from. Serco is partnered with Elbit Systems, Israel's weapons manufacturer, on the £2 billion contract that they are applying for from the Ministry of Defence. It is already providing services for Rafael, one of Elbit Systems' subsidiaries, but now seeks not only to arm the IOF, but to train 2,000 British troops in the art of genocide. And beware, for any of those who dare to intervene in this rotten supply chain, the last glimpse of the world outside the prison's walls will be seen through the Perspex window of the Serco prison van. So here on the 27th day of our own hunger strike, we see the hunger strike as a lit beacon proclaiming a network of connections hidden by distance and darkness, a call to action with our bodies as our voice. So solidarity with the 30 detainees. Your choice of action tells us all we need to know about your struggle. A hunger strike is a gamble you make with your life, one that is never made lightly. A king has never been on hunger strike, and it is kings, not migrants, that we could live without. From His Majesty's prisons, we're here with you. So really powerful words there. And of course, echoing the fact that hunger strikes are something that happen regularly in the most marginalized society can be, particularly here, highlighting the fact that, there were 30 migrants in a detention center in the UK who went on hunger strike. And I think this was a couple of weeks ago to basically protest their conditions as well, because, they're in terrible conditions and they're having to hear fucking fascists outside their fucking hotel every week just yelling and saying that they should be deported and stop the boats, yada, yada, yada. So really important stuff. So I think, there we could get like an insight, into how exactly, the prisoners themselves are feeling about their hunger strike and how they think it relates to the broader struggle. So again, really important to not kind of have this idea that there is, you've got to remember, these people are not allowed to speak to each other. You know, like what Ami was saying is you know, going to be similar but slightly different to what you know, Umar Khalid said, and you know, etc. with the various different detainees and hunger strikers. So yeah. Now there are loads of ways that you can do something about this. There are loads of ways that you can you know, escalate for the hunger strikers and stuff. And you know, the easiest one being write to your MP, and you don't need to write anything super fancy. We've spoken about this before. You know, just the more people who send a letter or an email or phone, you know, the offices of your MP, the more it will overwhelm them. You're not going to have the magic words that suddenly make your Labour Friends of Israel MP suddenly go, oh, do you know what? That money isn't worth it anymore, and I'm gonna I'm gonna have a backbone. Like, you're not gonna have the magic words to do that. But if you show them that there is a potential loss of social capital because of this, and a potential loss of their office and therefore their job, then you know that is something that is going to be a bit more leverage of what you could do. Alongside that, you can also contact the prisons that they are in. All the information to do this, I believe, is on prisonersforpalestine.org. And there are some prisoners who have said, please don't contact the prisons. So just make sure you double check the website, Prisoners for Palestine. There is a toolkit on there that I'm going to just find now. Yeah, the toolkit there, support the hunger strike. So yeah, you can get them to sign Early Days Motion 2386, which is a motion tabled by John McDonnell, one of the only remaining socialist Labour MPs. So he has tabled an early day motion expressing concern about the hunger strikers and called on David Lammy to respond to them. So there is a tool there. And like I said, you can get that on Prisoners for Palestine. If you just go to resources and go to toolkit, you can get that.
A couple more suggestions that I've seen in toolkits for this stuff. One is to contact the prisoners' MPs. Or if you're, this is a one if you're in the UK, like they are all obviously you know, British citizens. They all live in Britain. They all have MPs. You can write to their MPs. That you have to look them up and hopefully find the toolkit to do that, I think.
Yeah,
I think the information is available, and you can contact everyone who should be like, you can say like, you know, this is your constituent, like this is someone you are meant to be protecting, and encourage them to, those MPs, to contact David Lammy to put pressure on this, all of this stuff. Although like a bunch of MPs have been trying to get David Lammy to do something about this, and he's just been completely ignoring them. I think it is because he can't confront the horror of what he's doing. I think he knows how evil it is, but that is a man who will crack, in my opinion. Someone who refuses to meet with you at all is someone who, if he's forced to confront the issue, will break down on it. So I think, you know, contributing to that overall like noise about it is a good thing to do. For people outside of the UK, if there is a British embassy in your country and you know where it is, you can actually go there and just say like, hey, I've been hearing about these hunger strikers. You don't have to be the most well informed about it. Read up as much as you want to be like, you know, confident in talking about it, but you can literally physically go there, or you can phone, or you can email them, and you can just say, I've heard about this thing and I think that's fucked up, and I want like to officially register my discomfort with like the British state in general for this action. Yeah.
Yeah, you could get in touch with them. You can email the prisons, because one of the demands is to end the censorship of communications with, you know, the prisoner and their families and loved ones. You know, they've had like phone call privileges removed and all this kind of stuff. It's just been really, really shit. You could also contact the UK Ministry of Justice. There's like a contact form, you know, which I don't know how many of these, how many people are actually like getting in touch with the actual Ministry of Justice. So it could be quite interesting to do that if you haven't already. And yeah, important to remember that the demands are end all censorship of communications, release the prisoners who are on remand on bail immediately, ensure their right to a fair trial, and drop the terror link and all terrorism charges against them, and shut Elbit Systems down. Obviously, it's something that is very reasonable. It's reasonable demands when you think about the connection of all this stuff. You know, shutting Elbit Systems down obviously is going to be the most, I guess, debated by people, because they'll just be like, well, no, you know, this is a private company, you can't just do this, blah, 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 this, that, and the other. And it's like, yeah, but, you know, you're violating international law, and that's what's going on, you know what I mean? So yeah, also local council, if you're in a trade union, or you know, you can ask your local council or any other organizations to do a solidarity action and organize one yourself. Yeah, there is also a weekly meeting that you can join every Sunday at 7 p.m. So that's probably just finished, UK time, 7 p.m. You can join that via Zoom, and you can do that using the Prisoners for Palestine website.
Yeah.
You go to the resources and join that there. Yeah.
And obviously, as we are doing, if you have any place to shout about this situation from, it's an urgent one. So please do. Like, it's also worth explicitly saying that, like, the UK media is obviously not happy to talk about this at all. And because it's so immediately polarizing, people will just be like, well, it's obvious what should be done about this. Like, people, these people should be treated better. They should be talked to. There should be some amount of negotiation. If you just hear about the situation at all, unless you've got like wonk brain and you're trying to do some, I don't know, like Novara Media op-ed about whatever. And then you're suddenly, you have a really good reason for disliking the hunger strikers, I guess. But like most people will hear about this and be fucked up about it. So I think that just like making a stink as much as you possibly can if you have a platform to do anything from.
Yeah. The issue is that the British media is okay to talk about it, and that is because it's done decades and decades of manufacturing consent to make sure that prisoners are seen as non-humans. You know, when you hear people talk about this, particularly, you know, they will just have a very, very black and white opinion on it, you know, especially if they're like a conservative talking head or something like that. It'll just be like, well, why should we, you know, concede to the demands of prisoners just because they refuse food? That means that if a rapist says I shouldn't be in prison and I'm eating, we'll just have to let him out. We can't work society like that. And it's because all these people are fucking, obviously, like, horrific, psychotic, evil-brained, like, pieces of shit. And I think that that's why it's so important that we talk about it, and you know, you talk about it in like a human way. And I think that you can talk about it if you're speaking with people who are genuinely engaging you in conversation. Let's say, for example, that one of you listening to the show today gets a meeting with your MP, and they get to, you know, they're sat down with you. And they say something along the lines of that, then I think the way that you could probably word it to them is, hey, look, the charges that they're on are like aggravated burglary and assault. You could get bail for that stuff. Like, you're allowed to get bail for that stuff. They've been denied bail. You know, they've been held on remand for a year and a half. Like, come on, man. Like, it's not that difficult to look at this and see that it is absolutely a miscarriage of justice. The only reason that the state doesn't want to let them out is because it's terrified that they will, you know, tell other people that they could do this. You could just go and do this and disrupt the weapons, the arms trade and stuff. And also, yeah, like, the government should be thinking about its complicity in the genocide of Palestine. Because, you know, there are, ideally, if the rules-based order in this world is upheld, then there will be consequences for it. And, you know, if you pertain to agree with the rules-based order of this world, then you should care about that, because, yeah, you know, I don't want to repeat myself because it'd be redundant, but, yeah. This is the whole thing. Like, you know, we have to think about it in these very simple terms, because it is a very simple thing. The state is silencing political dissent, and again, it is, you know, like, I will repeat what I said earlier. in that, you know, we have had someone on this show who was certain that he was going to get put inside because of you know, something that he did with Palestine Action, because he is an experienced actionist and has had run-ins with the cops, and he was not. And that's really good. And I'm not I'm not in any way saying that, you know, it's unfair that he didn't and they did. But again, you know, the cops are not focusing on experienced direct actionists who have done repeat actions, who have done loads of different stuff in the past. They are focused on new people to direct action. They've never done anything like this before. They've just decided, right, yeah, we're going to engage in this extreme form of protest. And the cops have gone, right, all of these were proper inexperienced. They were proper, you know, young, and we're going to make an example of them. And, you know, it'll terrify them. It'll give them the worst experience ever. And when they come out, if they come out, they'll be telling everybody all around the world, wow, that was really scary. Don't do crimes. You know, that's how the state suppresses, you know, this kind of action and stuff. So it's important to remember that particularly. And I think that, you know, again, like, you know, to even supplement what I'm saying here, like the Filton factory was not necessarily like a key factory for Elbit Systems. They had factories all over the UK, and Palestine Action shut multiple factories down, you know, where they've had to like sell the factory off, and like, you know, the landlords have ended the lease and they're saying that we're not going to do it and stuff like that. And multiple of those actionists who were involved in that did not face prison time. They certainly weren't held on remand, you know, awaiting a trial or anything like that. This particular case is absolutely, you know, without a shadow of a doubt, it's so easy to see they have targeted young activists to make an example of them who are inexperienced. And, you know, and that's really the tragedy at the heart of this as well, is that they feel so strongly for Palestine, and they feel so strongly fearful of the state and the fact that they feel like people have forgotten about them, and that they are having this like massive injustice done to them, that they are willing to die. They are willing to die by starving themselves, you know, because it's not a pretty way to go, from all reports. So really important to remember that. Yeah, it does. It teaches them a harsh lesson, and that's entirely what the state is trying to do. So yeah, that is our, I guess, coverage of it. That's our segment on it. We would normally take questions, but I don't know if there's any other questions. There is someone in the chat who has had a question. TransFoxGirl1312 says, how do we maintain a rules-based order as we rapidly move towards a post-liberal society? I don't know if you're asking the right people.
Fake. That was not real in the first place.
Yeah. The reason that I was mentioning the international rules-based order earlier was because you know, that is a way that you can appeal to your liberal MPs who live in that liberal society still in their mind.
Yeah. I think like, the international rules-based order is like, was only something that like maybe briefly existed when both China and the USSR were superpowers, and it was like enough of a like kind of like you know, threat to Western hegemony that that they couldn't kind of just do whatever they want. Like maybe that might have been like a small period of years, like maybe like 5 at the most. Maybe.
Yeah, you could make like a dissertation length argument that it existed for a brief amount of time. But just broadly looking at it, no, it didn't. Like,
and it wasn't for like, you know, because of like liberal goodwill or like the hope of a better world or anything like that. It was like, you know, kind of like more to do probably with mutually assured destruction.
Yeah.
This is the thing about the bourgeoisie, is we need to just be threatening them with a big gun. It's been Red Planet.
This is why everyone has nukes.
This was Red Planet. We are a show made possible by Patreon. You hopefully all know your homework because we've been a lot of this topic has just been telling you about the things you can do. Please check out the links if you're listening later to the description for links to what you can do. But also check out our Patreon because our show is made possible by our supporters on Patreon. We literally can't do it if you don't support us. We need more financial support. If anyone is a regular listener is able to, if you like the show, please pay for the show by going to patreon.com/red_planet. There's a variety of tiers there where you can get a variety of different rewards for supporting us. At the top tier, however, you get a personalized thank you on the end of every single show. That looks like this. Thank you, Risk Inverse, for being a sicko tier subscriber to the Red Planet Patreon. But
Thank
lastly, Mule, where can people find more of you online?
You can find me going live Monday to Thursday, 6 p.m. till late UK time. I will be going throughout the Christmas period streaming, mostly because I don't have anything better to do, but mostly also because I need money. I'm on benefits. Please give me money. Money me now. And yeah, I've also got a couple of YouTube channels. I've got a YouTube channel where I do longer form, interesting videos about things like landlords, about things like Palestine. I do have a video planned about the Filton 24, which I'm hoping to get out before the end of the year. So if you are looking for something to watch during the Gooch of the year, I'm sure you could check that out. I also have a clips channel where I have little clips of my stream. It's just literally called Mule Twitch Edits or Mule Twitch Clips. I think it's Mule Twitch Clips. I recently put out a little clip in my stream where I talk about the UK Chief of Defence Staff saber rattling about Russia, because that's definitely how you save a government's reputation, isn't it? You completely ruin any kind of social capital that you've got with the public, where they don't want to do anything to support you at all, and then you go, yes, it's time for a bout of war. Actually, a bit of war, that'll be good for you. Peons, yeah. So you can check that out, and please comment on it, because all that happens nowadays is boomer fascists get hold of my videos and they don't watch it and they just comment. They just look at the thumbnail and they just go, put the migrants on the front lines, and that's all that's in my comment section. And I need all of you to watch it and go, shut up, you little fucking win it. That would be really helpful for me if you did that. So anyway, Tim, where can people find more of you?
You can find me on YouTube and Twitch as Conquest of Dread. Not that I'm very active on either anymore, but on Twitter and Blue Sky as Dread Conquest. Not that I'm super active on Blue Sky either, but I log in maybe like once a month, if that. But I
think it's important to say that your videos are timeless, though, Tim. Like, Tim's got some great videos on, like, protest street tactics and stuff. Like, yeah.
Yeah, well, if you're interested, check them out. I feel like, like some of that stuff is, just as valid now, even if maybe perhaps more so. But yeah, otherwise, yeah, I'm on Twitter all the time talking shit. Also, if you're into like tabletop RPG stuff, you can check out on Twitter Dark RPG 2000. It's a project I've been working on for a while that is very close to being finished. Just needs a little bit more play testing. It's like a 200-page fully illustrated tabletop role-playing game about being little grubby working class people in a bizarre dark future dystopian reality. It's lots of fun. Soph, where can people find more about Soph?
All my links are collected together at linktree.ee/Sophie from Mars. You can support me. My main income is patreon.com/Sophie from Mars. And I'm a YouTube video essayist. My main YouTube channel is just video essays and on various topics. Go subscribe to my Patreon and you'll see all the updates about what's coming up, and you'll see it there. And you'll see it also early when it's done. You'll also see some behind the scenes content. I've got some more and more exclusive stuff planned for patrons at the moment. So yeah, please support me there. And I also stream on Fridays, but not this coming Friday because it will be the Gooch of the year, and I intend to be relaxing to the max, chilling out all cool. I guess just like check out Sophie from Mars on YouTube, Sophie from Mars on Patreon, and come back for more Red Planet next year, starting with the first Sunday. And also, just want to second Tim's plug of Dark RPG. I've looked at an earlier version of it. It's very cool. I'm very excited for it to be out, so people keep on checking that out. But that's me. That's us. Happy Christmas and New Year's, everyone.
See you next time.
Bye.